Thank you so much, Leslie, for joining me today. Very excited to chat about the 100X Accelerator, a social entrepreneurship accelerator built within the London School of Economics, which is super interesting. And I think this is needed, this sort of funding mechanism and the opportunity for social entrepreneurs to get in early and kind of build their idea and product to solve problems. It's super interesting, your path and journey so far. So let's kind of get into that initially. Like, what's sort of your path and journey been like before 100X?
I always say my journey started growing up. I was raised by a single working mom and my grandma and two older sisters. So huge familial influence with women all around me. And I think the interesting thing for me was because there was there was no gender in that sense because everyone was just doing everything, right? There was no assigned tasks between anyone. So I was the one kind of fixing the toilet and doing handiwork around the house, the run to the litter. And I think that's what led me to want to be an engineer. And it was interesting because I always said, I really want to make tangible change in the world. Like I want to do things that I can see the actual result of. And when you're a civil engineer, for example, it's bridges, it's roads, it's society that you're helping shape. And when I decided to study civil engineering, for me, it was how do we make society better? And this was manifested through physical stuff. But I think that's really where I started getting an understanding of how to just drive change. And that's kind of been a theme throughout my career. And what led me to 100X, various twists and turns, but I had a chapter of my career in venture capital, working in hardcore finance, realized that wasn't for me because it didn't really have that impactful piece for society that I wanted that was really grassroots and, linked to really helping those in real need. I worked in philanthropy. I was director of clean energy at the Clinton Foundation, working on energy projects around the world. And I loved my time, in that leadership role and kind of wanted to take what I learned in venture capital and also the Clinton Foundation and merge those together. And just before joining the London School of Economics, I'd spent the prior 6 years at Acumen Fund, which is actually a venture capital firm that's looking to do good in the world through its investments. So it was a really beautiful kind of marriage of my two previous
they're
roles.
amazing. Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, and Acumen's just such an inspiring, incredible organization with such clear values. And, that place really got into my DNA and I carry my Acumen values with me. And I really was happy to bring those into 100X and kind of shape them in a way that could take that, take the just clear mission and vision of what an Acumen was trying to do and apply it to a new source of capital at a new institution. And, just make sure that we could take social entrepreneurship a step further and make it even more accessible to folks. So that's really led me to take up this role at the London School of Economics, building 100X with this incredibly generous gift that had been given to the school of £50 million. And what an opportunity for me to really shape the organization, the culture, the values, the strategy of an organization. And that's really what I get to do day in and day out with the team, which I obviously love.
It's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the accelerator. I think there's been sort of a lack of these, I think, that focuses on social entrepreneurship and maybe social enterprises, looking at businesses and how we can use the idea of business and the strength and the potential that business has to kind of solve, societal issues really around the world. And there's so many amazing people and entrepreneurs doing some incredible things. Anytime I see like a really powerful accelerator looking, at these issues, looking to provide opportunity for, early stage entrepreneurs to get their ideas off the ground, it's really powerful. Talk about like the idea of 100X Accelerator, go into a bit of the details about its offering and like maybe what type of people should apply for it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And so often, I come from, a background in venture capital. And when you hear accelerators, you think a lot about financial success and growth and unicorns and, Y Combinators and Techstars. And those organizations serve a really important purpose in scaling, growing commercial companies. But when you look at the market, we are such an incredibly rich community in the social impact sector. So many of our friends, Echoing Green and New Profit and Acumen, who've done such incredible work. And you just wonder, why is there not a Y Combinator equivalent for impact where the goal truly is to scale impact, which is actually a very different modality than scaling financial performance or success. So, the real vision behind 100X is to create cohorts of social unicorns driving positive change around the world at scale. And we really anchor ourselves on that. And, when you get into the philosophy behind it, you realize that scaling impact is very different than scaling financial success. And, thankfully we're based at the London School of Economics, which is all about the betterment of society, understanding the causes of things. And when you're looking to scale impact, it's not just about growing the organization and fundraising at all costs. Because if we take organizations, charities, and social enterprises down that route, we're throwing them in the VC cycle that is
Hmm.
oftentimes a hype cycle of just, again, endless fundraising and an unsustainable
Yep.
growth. And I think the point of 100x is to say, if you're a charity or a social enterprise with a social mission, what are the end games you should be looking at rather than going public and endlessly fundraising and thinking about mergers and
Hmm.
acquisitions? What are some of the North Stars for these organizations? And again, because we're at this incredible institution, we're able to really understand and unpack what that means. So the end games for us that we want to nurture our ventures to realize are things like maybe government adoption is the end game you should be looking
Mm.
at. That's kind of your equivalent of
Right.
IPOing, is that ministry or a division or a department takes on your solution and recognizes it as the way to tackle a social problem that they should be implementing in education or healthcare. Maybe another North Star and end game is open source, right? That
Mm.
your model is actually is something that we can replicate around the world if we just made it into a PDF that people could leverage, around the world, like Alcoholics Anonymous, an
Mm.
incredibly successful organization that has the most effective, form of tackling alcoholism. And it's an open source model, right? You and I could start a chapter right here on this phone
Right.
call if we really
Right.
wanted to with a group of people. So maybe open source is the best way to scale impact. Another is sustained service models, recognizing that maybe you're a Nigerian organization and you're meant to serve 100,000 people, and that's actually it. And
Right.
that's okay too, right? It's not about we're going to be the Uber of Africa. Maybe it's like, no, look, this community of 100,000 people is facing this issue. Let's figure out a model where we can serve them long term and deeply, rather than saying we're just going to, have an app that people can download and we've reached 1 billion people. Is that as effective as really going deep with 100,000 people? So these are the things that we want to ask our entrepreneurs, and this is the vision. So you asked a really apt question, which was who should apply. I think it's organizations that don't see themselves going down the VC hype cycle, and they deeply believe in the impact and the model that they have, and know that they want a partner who can realize their impact at scale, whatever that might mean. And maybe you don't have the answer, maybe you do, but that's who we want to partner with, someone that's riding a big enough
Hmm.
wave that they know exactly where they're going and that they're committed for the long run. And if that kind of is the general criteria of the organization that you're building and you've shown some track record, 100%, you are so welcome to apply to 100x.
I like to try to call it like finding your scale, because we are like
Yeah,
traditional, VC route scale is so different than I think exactly what you said, right? Maybe your scale is 100,000, 150,000 people that use your product or service rather than 1 billion people. And
exactly.
through that VC, route, we always hear that investors look for like, oh, they just need 1 or 2 out of the 10 investments that they hit. Those, the rest of it, right? The 8 that, not saying that they don't make it, but there's so much capital invested in it. What if that was applied to, like, what if all nine or 10 can be successful rather than just 1 or 2? And I think the reason they aren't successful is because you have these ridiculous ideas of scale and
Mhm.
stuff like that. But this model is amazing because, one, there's not a lot of access to type of funding for what we're talking about. Access to VCs kind of just are not going to look at these type of companies because they look at, maybe 50, 60, 100,000 as not enough scale for certain things. So the access to different type of funding like this is just incredible. Talk about a little bit about what stage you kind of mentioned. Should they be in the market? Should they have some type of product market fit? Should they have users already? Talk about maybe when they apply, where should they be along sort of their life cycle?
Definitely. And we're a startup in our own right. So I always caveat that we're trying to figure that out
Yeah.
too. And someone joked, you guys should really go through an accelerator. And I thought that was
Accelerate for
amazing.
accelerators.
I know. I think in my next life, I'll
It's
start
actually
an
a great
accelerator
idea.
for yourself. I know, right? How to set up a really good accelerator. But it's really hard when you're a for-profit accelerator. There's just some like hard and
Yeah.
fast, financial numbers you can put out there that really indicate scale or stage. But when it's nonprofits and social impact ventures, it is tricky. So we own that upfront, and so we're trying to go through our own process of really putting in those guardrails. Mostly because want to be so mindful of people's
Yep.
time. We are not here to waste people's time. We want to get the right people in that we feel like we can support, who, feels like they can value from the program that we're building, which I'd love to share more about. But something that we found is that about 60% of the applications for our first cohort were too early. And what we meant by that was it was kind of in the blueprint phase still. It was kind of ideas in the back of a napkin, maybe one
Hmm.
person with an idea, maybe a early days website, but they hadn't actually tested their model in a market. And we totally recognize all the entrepreneurs who are just starting their journeys. This isn't to say they shouldn't keep going. It just means that that's probably at a stage where you should be looking at incubators and earlier stage capital than what we can offer, just because we're trying to take models that have some proven effectiveness and think about the end game and that scale. If you haven't done much proof point testing with a market or a group of folks that you're trying to work with, it gets a little bit tough for us to know and to have an offering that's going to be useful. So we found out that usually if you have 4 full-time staff, that's a pretty good barometer that you're at a point where you've been able to grow the organization to a point where it is able to take on staff, which is already a big deal. You've probably had some track record with a group of individuals. And we started noticing that this $100,000 mark of money raised in the past, whether it's grant or revenue from your business, that's also a pretty good proxy of readiness for 100x. So these are pretty hard and fast. I mean, we look at every application that comes in, with or without meeting these criteria, but we're noticing that the more successful ventures tend to have these 4 full-time staff and have raised about 100K in either grant or revenue earned from their business model. And that's at a pretty good stage where we're convinced, and our investment committee and the various, folks that come together to look at the ventures that apply, those are pretty good proxies for us, that you are on your way to having proved out your model and are ready for that next stage of growth that 100x really feels like it helped with.
What's sort of I guess the offerings or like the benefits of joining the accelerator, not just capital, but also some of the, the ancillary benefits of meeting with team and sort of going through the looking at the hard questions and having a group of, 100x, team members like help them through sort of these big ideas and next level of what they go through. So with talk about a little bit of the capital they get, but also like, what's the program, right? What do they get from that perspective?
For sure. It's so exciting to think about our first cohort, which is going to be joining us in September.
Awesome.
And they'll be the first ones to experience this world-class program that we're building. So the first thing I'd like to say is I love when entrepreneurs kind of ask me that question, because they should be choosy. It's their time. And any accelerator program or something that demands you to show up beyond just getting a check, I mean, it's worth asking, is this worth my time beyond the money? And I don't want to discount the money. First, I just want to say it is actually rare to find an accelerator that's backed with this amount of
Yeah.
capital and can provide 150,000 pounds of, catalytic capital, currently taking the form of grants, but in the future, we can evolve that to debt or concessional loans or repayable grants. But it's really exciting to have this money behind us, because I think that money matters, right? I mean, it means hiring more staff, and it means giving you a chance to maybe take the step back that you need to for 12 weeks with our program to, make sure that you're going in the right direction and have that capital behind you. But in addition to the money, which I think is if not more valuable, the first is the community. And I want to raise that first because, when I was looking at taking on the director position of 100x, I was, reaching out to a lot of people that ran accelerators and saying, what makes you guys unique and successful? And unanimously, they said our
Mm.
community. And every accelerator is a community, right? It's bringing to the fore different types of people who want to get involved. And how amazing for the first time to have such a large accelerator based at a world-class university that also sees Mohammed Yunus and Christiane Lagarde all come through the doors of the London School of Economics to be part of that community, to open that up to ventures that never could have dreamed of some of these world leaders, but also academics who want to get stuck in problems with them, and also just social impact community where, Stephen Chambers, who helped found Skull World Forum, is also at the Marshall Institute. So that between the network of all of us, we have this tremendously unique community that anyone who is a venture with 100x gets access to. And something I'm really proud of is we ask entrepreneurs, like, who's your dream party, right? Like, if you could have trapped 8 people in a room and you think if you had their ear, you could really make a difference with the solution that you're providing, tell us who they are. And you know what? we'll actually try to go to bring them together because we are the London School of Economics, and that carries clout and recognition. And, we can't guarantee it, but we can certainly try more than if we were just some pop up
Yeah.
shop on Fleet Street or somewhere in New York or California or Nairobi. Like, that's the value of having the London School of Economics behind us, is that convening power. So in addition to the money, you get community, but also our program. And, we've been doing a lot of listening, right? What does an entrepreneur need? And everyone's journey is different, but we just tried to find some common denominator areas where we know a program could be useful. And the beauty is that we're willing to iterate. If we get feedback from our ventures that this was totally not where they want to focus, we have the agility to pivot and kind of be flexible. But three common themes we noticed are: one, the first is the scaling strategy. So the first part of our kind of flagship program is really understanding your strategy for scaling impact. And is it the right one? Can we do some lean testing and experimenting to make sure that you're on the right path? And it's just a safe place to maybe fail and test a few out around government
Hmm.
adoption or open source models. The second is impact, and assessing and making sure you're understanding the impact that you're driving and that you have the right feedback loops with your constituents, beneficiaries, customers, that your impact measurement and monitoring and evaluation is one that's actually helping teach you, are you serving your customers well? And again, I give so much credit to Acumen and Lean Data for really training me and the team about thinking about how do we get that customer feedback to make sure that we're thinking about impact measurement in a way that's really making sure just the depth of impact is there rather than just the breadth. And the last is this piece around networks and capital and
Yeah.
fundraising, because at the end of the day, it's not just fundraising, but it's really making sure you have the right network around you of people that can help you get to where you want to go. Some of them will be capital providers, others will be maybe policymakers, but spending a lot of time making sure that you're surrounding yourself with the right people, something that's super important to us. And in the program, those three pillars, scaling strategies, impact measurement, and this kind of network fundraising, are kind of where we're starting. And again, willing to iterate, but those are part of the offering that we want to bring to the fore with these ventures who are coming through the door.
I love the idea of having the accelerator sort of attached or sort of embedded in a university setting like this. And when you sort of took the position, was you're taking a position at the London School of Economics first, and then with the idea of building this accelerator, or the accelerator was always what you were coming over to do and it just happened to be part of the university?
Yeah, that history is one I love to share about. Also, I've never worked at a university, so I had my
Yeah.
questions of like, is this going to be a net positive? Is it going to be
Yep.
bureaucratic? You do wonder, and I'd love to share more about this because I think people often say, what is the link to the school? So just a bit of history. In 2015, the London School of Economics created something called the Marshall Institute, and it was a really unique moment in time because philanthropy as an asset class is still to this day really misunderstood. It's not very well studied, and it's billions and billions of capital that kind of doesn't get studied and accounted for. And when we talk about other capital markets, it could be money going towards oil and gas assets or
Right.
real estate. We understand those markets so well, yet philanthropy is this kind of black box of like, what drives philanthropy? Where does it come from? Is it effective? Is it solving problems? And the London School of Economics wanted to set up the Marshall Institute to really improve the effectiveness of philanthropy. And to start with that, it starts with understanding philanthropy. And that was set up again at the school. And 5 years later, after creating an executive master's course around social business and philanthropy, and also doing a ton of work on this topic, this idea in 2020 came about of, how can we take this a step further? Really, what's next for the Marshall Institute? And in conversations with the benefactor behind it, there was an opportunity to say, maybe it's time to put our money where our mouth is and kind of show the effectiveness of philanthropy rather than just teach and research it. And thus the idea for the world's largest impact accelerator was born, right? How can we use an enormous sum of philanthropy, 50 million pounds, and put it into practice in the world and create this accelerator to show how can we use effective philanthropy more effectively. And so the idea around an impact accelerator was born at the Marshall Institute, and they needed someone to lead this incredible concept that was really a kernel of an idea at the London School of Economics, but to really shape it, its relationship with the school, how it would leverage systems that already exist, where would it create its own unique identity. And when I was brought in, I mean, that was so exciting, right? To build something from scratch that has this enormous backing and an amazing partner at the school. And so much of my first, I'd say 6 months was just listening. Like, what is the relationship? Where is there
Yeah.
with the school? Where should we go and build externally? And just how do we craft that relationship? And we landed somewhere so beautiful, which is this really symbiotic relationship where we're definitely our own thing, within the school. We're not a department. We're not looking to train students and whatnot. This really is a global accelerator meant for the external world. But how do we leverage all the brilliant minds and research and connections and network that the school has to bear? And everyone's been so warm in supporting this. So to answer your question, we're still housed at the London School of Economics, but we obviously have our own brand, identity, website,
Yep.
operating systems that are independent from the school that make us really flexible. And I've been so pleasantly surprised at how warm and welcoming everyone's been for this concept to come out and to really exist in the world
You
on its
mentioned
own.
that you didn't, work at universities before. You've sort of been in, this finance, for profit side for so long. What's sort of your experience been like just working in a university setting? Been a couple universities in the UK, kind of just, walked around and met some people and stuff like that. I could go to school in the UK. The US might be a bit different, but what's it like sort of just, being amongst a university sort of day to day and ideas and so many people from different backgrounds coming through? Like, I guess, has it sort of invigorated you in a way that maybe perhaps you didn't expect?
It absolutely has. I love learning, and I think that to be able to go every day to a place where you step on campus and even you go to our office, conversations and the knowledge creation that happens at a place like the London School of Economics is just remarkable. And when I sat down with some heads of departments, I was just curious, what is the biggest issue facing refugees? What is, the biggest issue facing, how we're going to tackle climate change? And the things that you learn that shape your thinking, that go into our selection, just blow my mind. And so getting to work in university, you're around the smartest of smart people who have spent their entire lives and careers, pouring over a
Hmm.
topic and to really understand the root cause of things. I'll give you an example. I got to meet with someone who was working on refugees and migration. And, I really want to understand this issue because if a venture
Right.
comes to me and my team and they say, our job is to get food to the border in crisis situations, that could be great. And I don't discount that that's not hugely important. But when I sit down with a researcher who's looking at this, say, yeah, there's so many organizations doing that. But what we really need to be tackling in the refugee and migration crisis is the speed at which a displaced person gets access to a
Hmm.
work permit. I
Right.
said, a work permit? And they said, yeah, think about it. Once someone gets resettled, they're oftentimes without work. They're in a society that's foreign to their own, and they may assimilate to a community, but it's only really when you get to work that you can integrate fully into society, start contributing, having meaning, generating income for themselves, but also the economy. And it just changes how resettlement, that experience is for a refugee or migrant, is how quickly they
Hmm.
can get a work permit. So if you can find a venture, Leslie, that can get that period from 18 months down to 6 weeks,
Game changer.
that is a
Yeah.
radical innovation in social entrepreneurship. And that kind of conversation doesn't happen just in the
Yeah.
commercial world, right? That is an intellectual, knowledge backed conversation that I'm having with someone that's kind of changing my mind and teaching all of us, what really is, again, understanding the causes of things. That's what the LC is all about. That's a researcher that's helping me and my team understand the cause of things, right? What leads to disruption with a refugee's experience and whatnot. There's many things, but that's one where I
Right.
never would have thought of that. And now we can be on the lookout for ventures that are really doing these systemic work around tackling a problem that we may not have known if we were just, not based in a place that produces so much great
You mentioned
information.
first cohort in September. How many is in that cohort? And is there a specific number of members or ventures in each cohort going forward? Are you going to sort of cap it at 8, 10, 12? Like, what's that number like for batches and cohorts?
Yeah, definitely. We're so excited to announce our 8 ventures. We announced them last week. So I want to give a huge shout out to them. So we have Afia Pamoja doing amazing healthcare work in Tanzania to raise citizens' voices to create a better system. Darcel working to revolutionize the teaching of math in Jordan. Gramal Foundation, they're a tech nonprofit that's designing solutions for farmers in India. Karya doing ethical data to improve economic opportunities for rural communities in India. The Labia Foundation, they're dedicated to improving the quality of education and well-being for children, particularly on the well-being part. Rocket Learning, providing both parents and governments tools that they need to improve early childhood education in India. Talamabad, an edtech company working with schools, parents, and students to provide world-class education in Pakistan. And Unlocked Labs, a US-based education and skills training platform for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people, again, in the US.
As we look like, 3 to 5 years down the road, what would you want 100x to sort of the success, like goals and successes you would like to see it achieve? Have you thought about that a lot, or is it too young to kind of really think about the future? And it's like, hey, let's get these foundational things ready to go before we could really think about, long-term stuff.
It's the right question, Grant, which is what is our end game? You know what I mean? We're an organization too. So what do I want to see? I want to see that, these organizations that we back achieve the impact that they want to see in the world, because that will just be, 1+1 will equal 100 again if and when any of these ventures become that social unicorn, achieving positive change on the scale of billions, whether it's $1 billion saved, 1 billion, educational curriculum delivered, whatever it is, we're really here for it for our ventures. But for us, we think this is a brand new model. Accelerating impact in this way is novel and new, and we're here to test it out and make sure that it's effective and working. So we have a ton of feedback loops with our cohorts. But what we'd like to see is we think our end game is replication. We want folks to copy exactly what we're doing and prioritize the scaling of impact. We would love to see 100x have kind of regional hubs around the world where we can really get deep in Southeast Asia, deep in Africa, maybe deep in Latin America, to really be understanding what are the systemic, impact issues in those areas and try to create more localized cohorts. That is always, such a dream. I've seen it, an incredibly effective Rooted Acumen and other organizations I've worked. It's just that local knowledge and container is always useful to solve global problems. But at the same time, we want other universities and funders and philanthropists to say, that model's fantastic. And we think scaling impact is how we want to go about the work that we're doing. Everything we do, we are so open book, open source. If anybody wants to look at our playbooks, our models, our curriculum, it is all up for grabs because, again, this is all about collaboration. There's no competition here. So between replicating regionally and just replicating with others, again, that is our end game. And the more we can see 100x, just this model being replicated, the happier I think we'll be. And we're an open door. Our inbox is even hello at 100x impact.org. And we vow to get back to everyone who reaches out within 5 days. So again, if you're listening to this and have questions about our model or want to see how we're thinking about building stuff, we'd love to be in touch.
Well, thank you so much, Leslie, for joining. This was an amazing conversation. Really done some great things in your journey so far. So I have no doubt that this is going to be, added on to your path that's been so impactful so far. So thanks so much for taking the time. I know you're busy, but best of luck to you and the team for the next decade.
Grant, it was a total pleasure. Thanks so much. And for anyone out there who's listening, definitely check out 100ximpact.org. We'd love to see you there.